Disclaimer. We're not qualified to speak on any of these topics or into topics in general. Our thoughts and opinions are our own and only reflect the thoughts and opinions at the time we're stating, and sometimes not even then. So don't go making a statue for us and ripping down 30 years when you find with Kato's a cat, or I eat my weight in steak annually. Our views do not represent those of any of the entities we're affiliated with, and commentary is satirical to describe our commentary if everyone else were as honest as us. Ever since we decided to expand the definition of literal figurative, as people who clearly now accepted that facts are advertising, opinions aren't nearly as authentic as the body part often associated, and words are just a combination of sounds intended to entertain us or prompt us to buy something, be that a product, a concept, or a taco. With that said, we're obviously from the future, and we're here to help the human race cross the finish line. Just kidding. We're here to make your stay on Earth more enjoyable. Stop taking everything so seriously. It's only life, after all.
You've got pod. You've got pod.
All right.
All right.
Welcome to
Not for you, baby.
It's a podcast that's...
It's not for you, but you're welcome.
We're glad you're here, though.
Super glad you're here.
And it's yet another week, and we've continued to be here, and you've continued to be here, and we're so happy about that.
So many things that have been done.
So how has your week been thus far?
It's been great. I don't know. How's yours been? Well, you know, when you're so busy, like, I don't know. You
Right.
have to ask that part of my brain that knows that kind of thing.
Right,
now.
you've got to
Like,
check in.
I'm great.
How am I doing?
I'm
I
hanging out
think
with you.
good.
I'm hanging out with you. That's like one of my favorites.
That is also
obviously.
one of my favorites. What a great
Yeah.
coincidence.
I know. It's gross that we love each other this way.
You're welcome.
You're welcome. And our love is not for you.
This podcast is sponsored by our love, though.
This might be our love, baby. And aren't you also lucky to be here witnessing the birth? Okay. Well, now that I made that thoroughly awkward in the tradition of Step Brothers, which is our theme of the week.
That is our theme of the week.
Check out our action here. I mean, my goodness.
Some vestige, some
Yeah, I
prestige
know.
worldwide.
I know, exactly. And for those of you that are vodding along with us rather than podding along with us, and it's a very fancy differentiation for video versus...
For our vodcast fans.
Yeah. You can see, obviously, this wonderful montage of our images, which is so great. Oh my God, we're so
Also,
funny.
some Andrea Bocelli, correct?
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly.
So,
stay tuned for a real treat.
Stay tuned for that right here.
Oh, yeah.
And you're welcome. So other than how we've been this week, do we want to kind of
Yeah,
dive
let's
into
jump
some
right in. Let's
news
jump
you
right
can't
in.
use?
Absolutely.
Do you want me to start
Why
first?
don't you go right ahead?
So, do you ever read a news headline and you've got to read it twice because you read it with the completely wrong lens the
Almost
first time?
every headline.
So, I'm just going to read the headline I read, and it was like, company in Australia makes mammoth meatball. And I was like, do they mean like size-wise?
Right.
No.
Or like
They
woolly mammoth.
did indeed make a mammoth
I mean,
meatball.
My mouth shouldn't be drooling. Like, I don't even like meatballs.
So
or
it's a
woolly
company
things.
in Australia called Vow, and they're a quote-unquote cultured meat company, which I had to look up, and it's what we're calling in vitro meat that we're developing through other ways, which it's a missed opportunity to call it in vitro.
In vitro!
I was like, I love it. But the idea is they're trying to create sort of a, like, meatless, meat-based products that are different than like the pork, chicken, all the beef things we've gotten used to. They did have to say, though, the mammoth is not going to be available for human consumption because it is from actual like proteins found in their DNA, and then elephant fills in the gaps. And they're like, we're not sure if people are allergic to these proteins. The idea was to show people the like diversity available in meats and the way we can do that in a meatless way. So they're looking to mix and match to create new kinds of meat, which that sounds horrifying.
Yeah.
I was thinking like that's how we get an Attenborough out there and they're like, oh no, we've made like a peacock mammoth buffalo or something like that. But that is what they're looking to do.
I mean, how is this not the road to Soylent Green?
Well, that was another thought that kind of fluttered around my head. I was
Right.
like, so they have something like 50 different genetic profiles of like existing animals, of which they're like, we can combine peacock and crocodile and kangaroo and a bunch of types of fish.
So
And I'm
great.
like, okay. But I was like, is this the improvement? Here's the thing. I could not find anything that suggests plant-based meat, just like different meat. There was something about the environment, but I was so thrown off by mammoth meatball. And we'll share a photo of said mammoth meatball because it is both mammoth in terms of what it's made of. Mammoth with the asterisk of, again, it's elephant fills in the protein gaps, but it's also enormous. So I had the same
my
thought as you,
God.
as I was like, I want a mammoth meatball. I want the biggest meatball sub available to me. But they were like, no, we're not going to feed it to people because we have no clue what people are allergic to. And I'm like, I'm allergic to almonds, which like currently exist. I cannot imagine how mammoth would suit me. What do you have this week?
So I have a little bit of Jennifer Aniston. That's what I have.
Oh.
I mean, maybe that's what I'd like to have. Just kidding. So she was on this show called Friends.
Yeah, familiar a little bit.
Familiar, exactly. And it was very popular in the 90s. In fact, our shared friend Stan Zimmerman was friends with Allie Willis, who actually composed the theme song that was then sung by the Rembrandts. So
Well,
there's a lot
that's
there.
so fun. That's like much better than 6 Degrees from Kevin Bacon.
Exactly.
It's like how many degrees to the Friends theme?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Anyway, big show. People still like it. Would you believe it? And there are puzzles and themes and
It
tours.
ended a long time ago, right? Like, am I allowed to
It
say
ended
that?
before it even ended, didn't it? But oh, you mean this? Oh, okay. You
But,
mean
like,
the hysteria? No, there's like, I swear, I don't know if I was in London because this wouldn't make sense, but I feel like I was in London. They were doing like Friends tours. I'm like, how would you have Friends?
Oh yeah, because they have a pop-up shop that's gone
Okay.
around like the world.
Okay, so I
yeah.
didn't imagine that.
No.
Okay.
I have several friends who went to the one in Boston, which launched like, I don't know, knee deep in COVID. And I was like, that's how you want to spend your time, knee deep in COVID, is in like a Friends pop-up 20 years after the fact.
Da-na-na-na-na-na-na-na. Hey, no one told you life was going to be this great. Anyway, it's still a thing. But Jennifer Aniston was interviewed by the Associated Press, Foreign Associated Press, this week about the Gen Z people that are finding the show and trying like watching it, and they're offended by it. And that's not just because people born south of the past 4 decades are offended by almost everything. It's in addition to that. Go ahead.
Well,
Go
I
ahead.
was
No,
gonna
go
say,
ahead. I see a little
I'm like,
head bobble. I'm like, what do you got?
I saw the show as my parents watched it. I probably shouldn't have watched as much as I did at a young age. I'm sure a lot went over my head because, I mean, by the time it was done, I was just coming into, like, cognizance of things. And some of the things are a little dicey, but, like, I think, and I'm speaking...
I think by dicey, your generation means problematic. Is that
yeah,
correct?
yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
Because I'm told I'm problematic a lot,
yeah.
and I think that means dicey.
Yeah, that's...
And I am.
Gen Z will say problematic, and millennials, we grew up with it, but we're like, eesh, it's that noise of everyone not being like, oh, this is not cool.
Yeah.
But
so,
Gen Z is loud about it.
do you remember anything about the show that would have made you think that?
Anything surrounding Ross is super toxic.
Is it
and,
his relationship with the monkey?
I was going to say, there's also one of the things that stood out in my head, and it strikes Gen Z as odd, is there's a moment where Ross's son wants to play with a doll, and he gets super up in arms about it. And as an adult, I'm like, Ross Geller is not the, like, paramount of masculinity, even on the show.
And what was the resolution to that?
I think they just let the kid play with the doll,
And
but, like, Ross didn't get there.
Ross didn't get there.
No, I think everyone else
it's
did.
possible because sitcoms have often, sitcoms were. This is a history lesson again for everybody who's born south of 4 decades ago, which of course I'm a part of.
You're 24?
20. Well, yes, I'm about to be 24. I was 26. Now I'm working on 24 as I button myself back into existence.
Oh, Benjamin.
Exactly. Is that sitcoms used to lightly broach on difficult subjects and put us all back together, still entertain us, without being, I would say, as heavy-handed as today's television executions are.
I agree with that. I think sometimes people forget that the goal of sitcoms or any medium is to entertain you.
Oh, yes, entertain.
Right.
Sorry.
Let's be clear. It's absolutely capitalism. Like, if you pull the Scooby-Doo mask off, it's like, capitalism!
I mean, these things cost a lot of money. I think the people on Friends were getting like $8 million an episode.
The amount they get paid per episode, I would have just done the show for, like, that amount.
I
would have just been like, I get to wear someone else's clothes.
I know.
I get to be a little famous. Just pay me $8 million ever.
So, I mean, obviously there's money, but yes, it's supposed to be entertainment. I think Jennifer responded, Jennifer on a first name basis. Jennifer,
your besties.
Obviously. Hey girl. She responded that I think that right now we just don't interpret things the way we used to. I don't want to actually speak for her. Let me read her. Her quote was, I don't think there was a sensitivity like there is now. The beauty of comedy is that we can make fun of ourselves and make fun of life. And I feel like that's the headline that maybe Gen Z and Gen Y have forgotten, is that, like, that's why we're here. I literally pitched the idea to do like R.I.P. or a roast of comedy, like because it was on its last leg, because we've now tried to wash it out of every part of creative expression.
Yeah.
And I think that that's not helping anyone. We are more angry and we understand people less than ever.
There's a lot of division, and I feel like the way Gen Z perceives humor is like a 12-year-old autistic child who just doesn't get the joke.
Yeah, but I love 12-year-old autistic children.
Well, bro, absolutely.
And I'm sure there are members of Gen Z that I love as well. So let's circle back to the Ross story that you gave as an example, which is a good example. And yes, ridiculous that somebody like Ross of all people would be like that.
Like macho dinosaur dude.
But in my life, well, yeah, he was, yes, exactly. An adult who likes to play with dinosaurs. But it was on break. But I think that's when we find this type of, I hate to use the word like the phrase toxic masculinity, but I've seen more evidence of whatever that sentiment is trying to convey in like the wishier washier of fellas than I have like the truly strong ones. Because I feel like the strong ones are a little bit more like, hey, listen, this is what I am. And if my kid wants to go play with a doll, like he plays with a doll and then he builds a tree fort, or maybe he keeps playing with dolls. I think that
they're actually just toys. They're just activities.
They're toys. They're activities. I think that a Ross is somebody that is more likely to be in that weird space. And I think that probably what they were trying to convey in this episode that I don't recall, but I'm going to guess is that it's okay for your kid to play with toys.
To be a child.
And even though you might, as yourself, not be that type of masculine identifying male, you might have your own bias internally that you need to examine. And would you believe it or not that we were actually able to suggest those things without hitting people over the head with it? I'm talking to you, Hollywood writers' rooms. It was once possible to do very big things with very small words because we got it, but maybe you don't got it. Like maybe today's generation doesn't understand it. You just have to be like, listen, we're canceling television. We're just going to do lessons about respect. Is that what people would like? Because that sounds so fun.
This podcast is not sponsored by Subtle Nuance.
Yeah, it's really not. So I guess I think she handled it in a very nice way. I think it's hilarious if the kids don't get it today, like,
well,
okay.
If they don't, yeah, it's an old show that, and I'm sure someone's gonna be like, not correct. I was gonna say you can probably binge it on like, I don't know, Netflix. I assume it's on Peacock now. I don't know. I haven't watched Friends in forever because I don't have cable anymore. So I watch the shows I watch, and I'm sure that there are times that I'm like, yikes, and I move on.
Yeah, but I want to be like, you want to talk problematic sitcoms? Boy, we had a lot of. I mean, Friends.
Our entire start of sitcoms is problem.
I think
the Honeymooners. Like, he's going to hit his wife. Yeah, and that's a constant reference. Exactly. Like, to the moon? Yeah. Come on.
Yeah, but I think, again, the funny thing is she actually ran the house, and that was the...
Right, that's
the joke there was that, like, the big guy's like, to the moon now, it's to the moon! But really, like...
You can't do anything.
Everybody's in on the joke if they're smart enough.
So we have a new segment we're going to introduce this week that you've kind of affectionately called the Balloon Knot.
Well, the Balloon Knot. We can share this obviously great nuggets of information in the news you can't use section, but there's sometimes difficult things, and that was really why we actually started the podcast in the first place, was to be able to talk about things that people are afraid to talk about, hopefully with a unique perspective, certainly without judgment, and with a
little levity.
Yes, a little levity, and with a ton of room for growth and understanding that we know that we need. Yeah. So we approach these topics with absolutely no authority.
Oh yeah, disclaimer. Listen to the disclaimer.
Exactly. Like, you should cancel us before we even start this discussion. But
we already did.
We are, yeah.
Cancel campaign.
We canceled. You can't cancel it. It's not for you. So the balloon knot, if you think about, like, what kinds of topics make your bum pucker? So the balloon knot is one topic from the news each week we're going to talk about that's going to make us all uncomfortable.
It's like abortion.
Yeah. Everybody's favorite.
Our favorite topic on the pod, abortion.
Exactly. Yeah. So everyone's second favorite topic is, of course, school shootings. And so for our first balloon knot segment, brought to you by a school shooting that happened this past week in Tennessee.
I don't even know where to start with unpacking that.
Well, so I think let's start with the trans angle, right? Because, first of all...
Because that's where everyone wants to start.
Well, we're going to... If there wasn't the trans angle, we wouldn't be talking about it because it would be...
Right.
Another school shooting.
Correct. This is a different flavor, at least, presumably. Everything
depends
has
on the
aspects.
perspective, because now there's a lot that's going on social media showing that, like, this is the new trans agenda, because there's...
I didn't get that memo. I didn't get that memo.
Yeah, there's a graphic that's going around, and it lists off, like, all the trans mass shooters.
So I have seen the list of trans mass shooters, which is funny, because that's
hilarious.
all, like, they're so close with the Venn diagram circle that they have in common. And the larger circle
Are
is
you talking
still
about-
mental illness. There's a larger circle.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. This is a mental illness issue.
Yeah, the larger circle, and I want to be very clear for anyone who is new here. I'm not suggesting that trans people are mentally ill. I'm suggesting that
mentally
the
ill people who are
overlap
also
is
trans.
high. Yes. I mean,
Isn't that
here's
a
the
different
thing.
way to look at that?
I
coin?
am a trans person with a mental illness, and there are ways that goes hand in hand. I've never brought a gun anywhere, but I can see where that demographic could probably overlap more frequently than maybe other like demographics you might pluck out from the abyss.
Well, I think that any marginalized, if we're calling these people demographic, any marginalized community.
Right. The real graphic is ultimately it's a mental illness issue generally, and it continues to be so. I mean, this is going to sound weird, and with announcing like I'm trans and mentally ill, I'm very interested in Columbine because that came up as I was coming up, and one of the features there is mental illness. Like it's broadly mental illness. It's usually mental illness. It's usually someone who has been sort of, I don't want to say like pushed to a breaking point, but each of these people felt like they had reached a point of desperation. That's the situation with that happened with Pulse, and it's really unfortunate that the way that these people felt pushed hurts others.
Yes, and I think that sometimes it might be beyond feeling pushed. It might be just the mental illness and the feeling of insignificance or not being seen, or other ways that mental illness carries out. It's very similar, I think, all the time about how, because of course, as I've mentioned, unfortunately many times, my favorite type of entertainment is murder, and so I've seen an awful lot of shows about serial killers and that kind of thing. Like, we don't really have them the way that we used to. I was watching a program, the new program.
It feels it's a lower number.
Significantly lower.
Like the 70s felt lousy with serial killers.
They were lousy with serial killers and like serial rapists and all this other stuff, and it was kind of like a sick person maybe chasing that headline. And so now the way a sick person chases a headline is with mass shooting. One of the things that I read was that because in that I don't know if it's a graphic or whatever that was shared on social media that lists like 6 shooters that were recently part of the trans community, whether that was like gender non-binary or not at all trans but just made it to the list or whatever it was. And somebody else had said, well, that makes up like 1.3% of the mass shootings, and trans identifying people right now in the U.S. make up 0.6%, which I think you've told me 0.3%.
Right, it's that number varies greatly. It's anywhere between 0.6 and 3%. So
it depends on whether like you just felt maybe you were a little trans yesterday, or maybe you're on HRT, or maybe you've done the whole thing, like whatever. There's a spectrum there, but whatever it is, it's not like massively misaligned with the representation in the population.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Yeah. Again, in this particular instance, I don't know. I mean, how trans was he or she? Like, I don't know, because
it's very unclear.
So I've seen like on social media, well, they said that this person changed their name to a male name, but then I saw that reported, but then I saw instances of social media accounts that still show birth names. So
yeah. So when something like this happens, all of the social media accounts get shut down. So Facebook's gone, LinkedIn's gone, Instagram's gone. And it's very hit and miss, you know, where pronouns are being used, where the name is changed. And I recognize that that's part of the process. This person could be very early in this, and that's not to knock this. But I've also not found a ton of concrete evidence that this person was, you know, their own mother described them, or someone on behalf of the mother described them as trans and gay, and I was like, well, which is it?
Well, that's the thing, because I have read multiple accounts of multiple people saying that this person, and they were referring to this person as a she, was upset because their choice pronoun, her parents didn't accept her for being gay or trans. And again, I thought the same thing. Well, which was
right? Like it can be both. But it's everything I heard is they're hiding the gender of this presumably deceased former partner. So I'm like, I don't know if this is like female presenting person, male presenting person. You know, it's all so confusing. I don't know what this person's name is. I I will tell you that I had that glimmer of the thought in the back of my head that if this is the first time we hold a white man accountable for a shooting, I am going to riot. But also, I do think that if anything can turn the tide of accountability, I'll also take it.
Sure.
Yeah.
Like,
I was like, the first time we held a
Yeah.
white man accountable for a shooting, it was a trans man, but also the jury is out in like 17 directions.
I guess that's the thing. Like everybody's clamoring when these shootings happen. Everyone's clamoring for the angle. So is it the gun angle? Is it the anti-trans angle? Is it the trans angle? So is it
Is
the
there a
HRT
gay angle? Like,
it's interesting to see people like try to clamor and find the reasoning and the meaning and all this. And I entirely agree with your first statement that this is a mental illness issue. It is. It's a mental illness issue. Are there things we need to do to button up our gun control and make sure that,
absolutely.
Sure, absolutely. But even people with guns that are gun rights supporters that I have spoken with and even just read agree that there's things that we can do to make it better, but we need to screen better for mental illness. Like everybody agrees about that.
That shouldn't be the discussion. Is like, and I'm just saying this. I have just a sprinkling of mental illness. I shouldn't be given a gun, not because I would hurt other people. I may hurt myself. Not anymore, but once upon a time, a thought in my head. I should not be able to qualify for a gun unless I go through some very rigorous sort of supervision or training or something like that. I should not be permitted to just be able to be handed a gun. And right now, the universe would let me have that.
Yeah, I think that if somebody wants to harm themselves or others, that needs to be screened up.
Yeah, absolutely.
I don't have the answer for that.
No, if we had the answer,
we could probably all agree that if you want to hurt yourself or others, maybe like a weapon isn't, unless it's in protection. Maybe a weapon isn't the thing for you.
No. Like a therapist is a thing for you. BetterHelp is a thing for you.
The thing that I think is interesting about this also is that there's been a sentiment both in some people that I know from the trans community, but even in some allies saying, well, what do you expect? How much are they going to put up with? And first of all, I'm like, so you mean they, the trans community, that this person may or may not be a member of, which I don't know. But second of all, I think like that's kind of disgusting reasoning and logic, because my rights have been trampled on through other parts of my life as well, when I couldn't get married or have the same representation as others, or wasn't allowed to, if I had a dying spouse, I couldn't be with them in the hospital. Like obviously never once, wanted to shoot people. Like there's been politicians that have done things against like the queer community forever. I don't want to say it's a low blow that comes from support, but it feels like a low blow that's supposed to be supportive, but actually feels like a low blow. Like queer community can't handle the fact, or the trans community can't handle the fact that there's like some laws that are being brought forth, which we could circle back to this, but I think part of the laws that are coming forth is because this is a new thing for us to figure out how to even navigate.
Right, absolutely.
So there's going to be laws and there's going to be things that come up because we do have to figure out, like, how does it work? At what age can a child say that they want to be referred to as a certain name or pronoun versus when do their parents have to be? These are just things that simply need to be figured out.
Right.
It feels like an attack, though. I'm sure it feels like an attack to see all this legislation, and some of it actually is.
I think the thing, and I'll say this from someone who's been sitting on this bleacher now for almost a decade. It's just shy of a decade, about a month shy, a few weeks actually. These cycles, and I'm sure this is an experience you've had. All of this legislation, all of this hate, it cycles, and I think it's constantly looping, and it had sort of faded a little bit. Like the bathroom debate was really big in 2013. Mm-hmm. It petered out a little bit. We went back to like gay marriage for a little bit, which is weird because we had already like passed that, and we were like, no, walk that back.
Yeah.
I think that we're always in a phase of like, it's just a cycle of hatred that comes. And so I sort of, without intending it this way, it's sort of our turn again. So I always expected that. I was like, it's been about 10 years. That sounds about right.
And then the other side of that is like the whole like anti-drag queen sentiment that's getting pinned
which
on
is
the trans
so
community, which is
strange.
Like, I feel like you don't get what any of these words mean or what the purposes are. It's very.
Now you're just taking them all.
I know. I mean, we could. Yeah, exactly. So we can come back to that.
Stay tuned for our drag queen discussion next week because I have so many thoughts on that. So get tuned for more balloons. But no, I agree with you, and I have some strong opinions about like the respectful ways to approach these boundaries, and I think that. Because you're right, with the added visibility, it increases the number of opinions.
It does.
And that's what it is.
And it increases the number of factors to consider, because you mentioned the bathroom thing. And whether or not you feel like the right answer there is a foregone conclusion, that's just a logistical thing people need to talk through. We need to figure out like who is allowed in what bathrooms and if there's certain ages. And the sports thing, again, I don't care where you're landing on that, but that's something that we do need to decide so that things are fair and everybody knows like we're all playing with the same rules. So I think some of these things are actually just people figuring out because of progress.
Right. I do think
But then
some of
there's
them
other
are in a
sides.
hate lens. I do think.
No,
that
I
in
do
certain
too.
areas.
Of course,
Yeah.
and I think that the default is just to assume that it's all hate, but it's not
Right.
all hate.
It's
Some
some
of it is-
logistics.
Some of
It's some
ignorance,
hate.
too. No, I just think that we have to be careful before we rush to any foregone conclusion about anything, because we're thinking that the increase of legislation means an increase in hate, and it's actually like that is the payment that you pay for progress.
Yeah. Right. Progress is painful.
It is painful.
Like there's to borrow a line, it's an old Andrea Gibson quote that was talking about, like, when asked of the Big Bang, the sun said it hurts to become, or something like that. I think about that, it hurts to become a lot, because that's the best way to describe what we're feeling. And whether or not this shooter is trans, I recognize that, like, tensions are high and people they also want to blame someone. And the real issue is mental illness and gun control.
Absolutely.
But it's a lot easier to be like, those scary trans people.
Absolutely. Obviously, we could keep talking about this, but I don't know if it might be time to do something more fun.
Yeah, we might. Let's lighten the mood a little.
Well, we have some stepbrothers for our weekly theme. We have some word association for
We
stepbrothers.
do.
And also a new segment. Why don't we start with the stepbrothers word association?
Okay.
If you're ready.
I've got some fun words.
I mean, should
for
we
you.
dance? Like, how do we do a cleanse of palate? Everybody go eat some ginger.
So I have a series of 6 words for you.
Like, in order, or
Just
different ones?
yes.
Okay.
I have 6 words. Just a total of 6 words that are all vaguely Step Brothers themed, because we are approaching the 15-year anniversary of its release.
Oh my god.
Yeah, it's not quite exact, so my pedantic brain is like, actually, it's in July, but we'll let this slide.
Thank you, autism.
This podcast is sponsored by Autism Awareness Month coming in April.
Exactly.
Your first word
Yes.
is prestige.
Oh. Oh my god. Prestige is obviously like if you want to say something is great and you're a douche. Prestige. Much like Prestige Worldwide.
So if you're Scott Disick and you want to say, you like lots
Yeah.
of prestige.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Clearly.
So your second word is commotion.
Oh my god, commotion on the ocean is all I can think about. And I'm not talking about one of those like tipsy dancing grooves that you take out of like the Boston Harbor where you have some drinks and you listen to commotion on the ocean. I'm talking about you taking your lady on a boat and making some commotion on that ocean.
Oh.
Oh, wait a minute, back to commotion.
All right. Your third word is Nighthawk.
Oh my god, I literally have nothing. The only thing I thought of when you said Nighthawk was like Knight Rider.
I was so glad you were in the same place. I was like, I don't know, if this were me, I'd be like, Kit.
I know,
it's
like,
Kit.
where's
It's Knight
Kit?
Rider.
Like, where's Kit at?
Yeah.
Like, that was literally all.
I'm so glad I picked Nighthawk and not Dragon.
Thank God, I know. Which are obviously like our names, but well, that's Step Brothers.
Your fourth word is drumstick.
Okay. So drumstick, this is not even a word association. This was just a story I was going to tell. I usually have drumsticks. I didn't have any drumsticks in the house, but I had like 2 salad serving tools that are drumstick ends. And I almost brought them out here to like play on the thing, like so you could be like, are you playing with like drumstick ladles? But that didn't happen. But that's all I have to say about drumsticks. Right
That's really funny, because I was like, and thinking about what you might think about when I put this word down, I was like, you might go with chicken and I would go with the ice cream. So your fifth word is bonito.
Okay, bonito. I'm much more into bonita. All right, that's what I'm saying. And I don't mean boricua. I mean bonita.
And this has been your Spanish lesson of the day.
Sí.
Your final word is kemosabe.
Oh, kemosabe. That sounds like something I will definitely be canceled for if I comment on. Kemosabe. I have a new segment in.
I was gonna say, yeah. I'm so excited for this segment.
Okay. This.
Pew, pew, pew.
So Ray Carroll is my father.
A national treasure.
From Ray Carroll. Yes, he's an actual
National treasure.
Yes, and I'm not allowed to say how old he is because my mother's very sensitive about that kind of thing. But we're just gonna say a newly minted octogenarian.
That's
so
very
you can do that math.
pleasant to talk
exactly.
about.
And he is wonderful and very funny fellow, great photographer. Lots of analyzing that's done, and he chooses his words very carefully. So we have a new segment called Ray Carroll Reviews, and this was actually prompted by LMC Spotlight, which is one of our company's divisions.
Well done, LMC
Well done,
Spotlight.
LMC
This
Spotlight.
podcast is sponsored by
Exactly,
LMC Spotlight.
Exactly. I'm gonna send bill. And so LMC Spotlight is like a design and graphics and digital.
We'll put you in the spotlight.
Whatever. Yeah, exactly. We'll put you in the spotlight. Who cares about them? The funny
Blah,
thing
blah,
is they
blah.
posted on social media the new We Heart NYC logo, which apparently has everybody up in an uproar and everybody has an opinion about because no kidding. So LMC Spotlight had posted a picture of the logo, and so if you are watching our podcast, you can see it here on the screen. Or if you are listening at home, you can look at our what do we have, like an album for each weekly show? Yes,
Yeah.
we do now. Basically, it's like We and NYC in like block font, and then there's a heart that looks like one of those squeezy hearts that you press, so it's like 3D in appearance.
Like a stress ball?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Thank you. And so LMC Spotlight was writing, it's been a little over a week since this new logo was unveiled. It's been unanimously almost negative. And one blogger wrote, "This sucks on every conceivable level and also on some levels that exist beyond human perception." Yikes. So we asked our viewers and we asked our social media community what they thought about this. And the first to respond was Ray Carroll, as Ray Carroll reviewed. And so Ray Carroll had this to say: "The blogger is a little overboard. I do not like it for two reasons. First, it goes against all rules of photographic composition. And secondly, all I see are the letters WENYC, which reminds me of one of those pharmaceutical ads on television for heart medicine, whereby they take some letters and rearrange them into a brand name. WENYC. Good for your heart problems." Wow, how do I really feel? Maybe the blogger was not overboard.
Oh my god, I love that.
I know, I loved it.
Also, I can see like the cloth you might be cut from.
Oh, can you now?
Thank you, Ray.
I thought that was amazing, and so I thought, my gosh, we need some more of this in our
We need
life.
to highlight
so we
Ray
might
Carroll.
have a recurring segment where we have Ray Carroll reviews, and it'll be other things that you need to know about, and we need this level.
Through the lens of Ray Carroll.
We do. I mean,
I know, I'm wholeheartedly in agreement.
obviously, yeah. And so we love Ray Carroll. We don't love NYC's new logo, apparently. So,
Well,
yeah,
I
mean,
love a good Ray
grateful for
Carroll
that,
segment, and I'm
exactly.
so ready for more of them.
Yeah. And so before we get into the very exciting Judy Greer segment, I think you have a
I do.
John C. Reilly.
I have a John C. Reilly
Okay.
contribution on
Now,
theme.
John C. Reilly, for those of you who shamefully might not know, is obviously the role of stepbrothers that Kato is playing. tonight.
Correct, yeah.
Yeah.
So this is a fun factoid about John C. Reilly.
Okay.
When he was 12, so circa 1977, he and his friends stole 500 boxes of corn pops from a freight train.
Oh my God.
And he's mentioned it on a number of talk shows, but I've never wanted to know more than that statement. It's just him and his friends,
Same.
12 years old on a bike, stealing corn pops. So
So he grew up in what, Pennsylvania?
I
literally
I
don't
have-
know. I was
yeah.
just picturing where were people near the tracks where the kids were cool enough to jump on a train and leave their parents.
Yeah, we'll
So
have to
they could
share the
ignore police.
video of him and confirm
All right,
where
we're
he's
gonna
from.
look into all
but-
this. I need to know so much more.
Yeah,
And
I
what
was
were
like-
they? Corn what?
Corn pops. So like the
Why
little-
would they steal that?
Corn pops are one of my favorites.
You gotta have your pops?
They're
Is that what you're telling me? You gotta have your
they're a
pops.
guilty pleasure for me. Yeah.
Do you even know what I'm talking about when I say?
Oh yeah,
that's
that's still the slogan.
okay. I
That
don't
is
know.
still the
I didn't
slogan.
know they still made that.
But now on to our Judy Greer update.
yeah.
And this one, I just like the headline for this one. Sometimes I don't even like to read. Like I read the article, but I was like, the headline in itself is the discussion. It says, Judy Greer is tired of menopause and aging being punchlines. And she said, and I quote, "We're smarter and better than that." And I kind of like that as sort of a great coda for our sort of thing. Is like some things like joking about Asian people or fat people or all
Yeah.
these things, we're just kind of better than like really low bar heat. And she was like, I'm tired of it being punched down to like women. Like
Yep.
the second I hit 40, all of the birthday things are tombstones. And she's like, I don't feel like I'm dying. And I was like, I kind of agree. Like, I recognize she's like speaking of the lens of like an older woman, but I agree that like so much humor
Okay.
punches
she
down.
is not speaking through the lens of an older woman.
I
Okay.
am.
Judy
what I'm
Greer,
saying
I
is,
got you. I got you.
what I'm saying is, she's not like speaking to me of like a 33-year-old man who does not have like tombstones at his birthday party. You're right, it's not old, but historically we've seen it as like over the hill. So we just, when time expanded, our lifespans, there's just this gap of time
Exactly.
that's just like, I don't know what we are.
It's just like you watch people on TV that were like 50 years ago, and they look like what I would interpret
look
somebody in
ancient,
their late 70s
yeah.
to look like today. And I'm totally teasing. I don't think Judy nor anybody in that age range would care about you calling them an old lady, other than the fact that it's hilarious because she's so like not. You
Right,
know,
but it's just the fact that the
she's
comedy
romance around
still.
literally like you and all of your friends like 25 times, and then spank you on the butts and be like, "Haha, kids, was that problematic?" So that's what I'm signing up
But
for.
I just like the fact that like comedy hasn't quite caught up, so it treats women over a certain age as like ancient.
Oh, they do.
Yeah.
They do.
It's like how old are your jokes, writers' room? You're saying that woman's over the hill. She's 40. Like
Exactly.
she looks 24.
Exactly. You're doing much better now. There you go.
Yeah. I don't want Judy Greer to dislike me.
She
I already
hates you. Just call her an old lady.
I was gonna say, TV's Amanda Burse already has strong opinions about me every so often.
The other thing Judy said this week, which I liked, Judy, on Instagram on Tuesday, she posted pictures of herself looking very fancy. She's like, everybody knows about casual Fridays, but what do you think about like fancy Tuesdays or formal Tuesdays or something like that? I'm like, yes, I love that.
I was gonna say that was actually a thing I used to implement.
Yes.
I was gonna say we used to do. Yeah.
So I mean, we might want to experiment with this.
I like that.
I feel like we've already had 2 Judy Greer things, so like I'll wait.
Your cliffhanger.
But I think what we
keeps
might
going.
want to start doing is like dressing up fancy on Tuesdays and like tagging her in it.
Ooh,
on
I
Not
like
For You.
that.
So maybe we'll start doing that.
I like that.
So I can't wait to see.
Thank
how
you,
fancy
Judy
you are.
Greer, yet
Although,
again.
Yeah, next week's podcast though, we're going to be on location.
It's going to be a special edition. Look
Oh
how
my
lucky
God.
you are. We had a special St. Patrick's Day edition,
Yep.
and now we're going to have a special. Well, we won't
Something.
tell you where we are, but we're going to be on location. And it's going to be great.
It's going to be great. So stay tuned for our next Not For You. You'll love it so much because it's not for you.
All right. Thanks for joining us
Thanks,
for another
everybody.
week. Okay, bye.
Bye.
One no so, with my thoughts I am thinking of you. Who are you, listeners, to this podcast? I so want to meet you. Not in a creepy way, I'll say, this pod's not for you.
Boats a house.
Say not what you want to, and we'll say our truth. It's not based on any research. We just read headlines and speak out and record. As time marches on, we'll be exposed as the frauds of this pod, but this pod's not for you.
Boats and hoes.
Thank you.